Today, I'd like to talk to you about readers. As writers, we love readers, right? We write our stories because we want to connect with readers. We want to entertain readers. We want to share our stories with readers. So we want to do a couple things. First of all, we want to understand who our readers are, but mostly what we want to do is make sure that when we write our stories, we are not confusing readers, and instead we are writing stories that are clear. They understand the story question, they understand who the characters are, they understand the plot. Everything is clear. So they're not questioning anything unless they're supposed to question something like who was the killer or whatever, right? Those kind of things are okay. We just don't want them to be confused and not know what's going on. So today let's talk about writing stories that are clear to readers.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Monte channel. If this is the first time that we're meeting, I'm very happy to meet you. I am a women's fiction author, and I do try to create videos, and I've been successful for the past couple of years of creating a video every Friday. And my goal is to help you write your stories, clarify any questions that you may have about writing, and just have you enjoy the writing process a little bit better. So today then, let's talk about making stories clear for writers. So the other day was really interesting because I was in my house and a helicopter was going around, and I could hear that they were saying something. So they had their big megaphones, and they were saying something, but when they're flying so high up, sometimes you really can't understand what they're saying. So I went outside, thought, well, maybe I can understand what these people are saying. I didn't know what was going on. Was there robbery at the closest grocery store? And they're saying, be careful. There's somebody loose that could be dangerous. Are they saying that there's a fire? What are they saying exactly? So I kept trying to listen, and it wasn't clear. I could hear a few things that they were saying, but I was more confused than anything else. So then I thought, well, now I really don't. Now I'm curious. I don't know what's going on, but I also can't hear. So I went on to my social media and I said, hey, does anybody who lives close to me hear this? What are they saying? I went to my other sites, the neighbor sites and all this, just to see, right? And together we were all able to piece together some words that we heard and figure out what was going on. And it was that there was a child that apparently was lost. I couldn't really tell if they were a toddler or a teenager, but there was a child that was lost, and they were trying to find that person. And they were describing like the clothes that they had and saying that this person was lost. So they were just trying to locate this child. But this little experience made me think about writing and how sometimes we can confuse our readers. So if we're not super clear, if they're saying, what did she mean? What is this author trying to say? Why are they bringing up this topic that doesn't seem to have anything else to do with the story? Anytime that the reader feels confused, not good confused, like, hey, I'm wondering if this character is really going to fall in love with this other character, or if they're going to figure out the crime. There is some confusion that is part of the story, and that's a good thing. But if they're just confused, like they just don't know why you're bringing something up. There's something you mention and then you never mention it again, or the plot just seems to meander, or anytime that they feel lost, they're not going to be happy, and they're going to want to put your book down. So how does this happen? What are the most common reasons that an author will confuse or frustrate a reader because a reader doesn't know what's going on? There are 5 ways that you might end up confusing your reader, frustrating your reader. The first is that you have inconsistent characters. So the characters, you don't know your characters well enough, and your characters are making decisions that are not consistent. You create a character a certain way, and you tell the reader that this is the type of character that he is. He's very organized, whatever. And then in the next scene, he's doing something that you think that the reader is going to think, well, wait a minute, you just said this about your character. Now he's acting in a different way. So he's being inconsistent. The second way is jumping points of view. So you have 5 characters, one paragraph you're in one character, the next you're in the next character, maybe within the same paragraph, you jump from one head to the next head, and it drives the reader crazy because they're not really sure, like, wait, who's telling the story? Who am I supposed to be listening to? I was really connecting with this reader and the feelings that they were having, but now you're telling me that now we're looking at this whole scene from a different character. A lot of times, that inconsistent point of view or too much head hopping that will confuse or frustrate your reader. Another thing is meandering plots. So your plot just doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Just, you spend a little time going here, and then you turn, you go down here, and then you go back up, and then you're way over here, then you're back up here, right? So your plot is just meandering. You're just taking a stroll through these people's lives, and there's no goal. There's nothing that you're leading your reader to. So your reader doesn't know what to follow or what's really going on. The next one is not having a goal, right? So your character doesn't really have a goal that he's reaching for, or you as the author don't have a goal. And you need both. The character must have a goal, must know what they want from this story. Why are we, and why is he going on this journey? And you as the author must have a goal. Like, what is it that you are trying to tell your reader? What is your story about? The last one really just has to do with language. There might be a style problem, there may be a language problem, that you're just not being clear with the way that you're writing your story. So the great thing is that all five of these problems really can be fixed, and so that you can create a very clear and focused story so that your reader doesn't get confused and is very happy to read your story. Okay, and let's talk about each one of these in depth. So before I do that, I do want to ask you to make sure that you hit the like button and that you subscribe to the channel, because both of those things helps me to continue to make videos. So first thing, consistent character. Okay, so you are making a promise to the reader. When you create your character, you're saying, this is who my character is. This is the type of person he is. These are the things that he likes. These are the choices that he tends to make. This is his goal. Okay, so you have a character. Each one of your characters actually you should know these things about each one of your characters, unless it's like a walk-in character who's leaving, somebody who's bringing a glass of wine to your character, to your main character, right? So this person, we don't really need to know a lot about this person, just that he is able to walk on and bring a glass of wine, right? But any character who is going to be spending some time in your story, you need to understand that character a little bit more. And what you're promising your character, right, is that I know who this person is, and they're very consistent. Let me give you an example. Let's say that your character is a firefighter, and you've described this person as being super brave. He runs into the fire. He saves people. He's just this very alpha male who is very strong, very tough, very brave, all of that, right? Then at home, you have another scene where he's sitting at home. He's maybe watching TV, he's drinking, he kind of, is falling asleep. Then there is something that happens, there's a noise or whatever. The wife is scared and she's saying, oh my God, somebody may be breaking in. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. And she's like, no, really, I heard somebody, I just heard the window break. There's something going on. And he's like, okay, not even drunk. He's just kind of relaxed, right? And he's like, just, you're hearing things, just don't worry about it. I'm sure it's nothing. I'll go out in a little while and I'll check. Okay, does that seem consistent? Well, no, it won't seem consistent. Why? Because you have described this character as being super tough, and being very brave, and being, a firefighter who saves people's lives. Is he going to just sit back and tell his wife, just I'll check it later? Or, is he really going to do that? It doesn't sound like the same person. And that's the problem, is it's not the same person, right? The person who is this very strong firefighter who's very brave is probably going to say, yeah, I heard that too. Or maybe I didn't hear anything, but let me check this out. Even if he's tired, even if he's had a couple of beers, right? He's still going to be the same person. He's just going to tell her, look, you sit here, get your phone. I'm going to go out there. If there's any problem, or, if you hear anything, call 911, right? Or he'll tell her to do something. That would be a consistent character. So make sure that your character is acting the way that character, the way you've created that character. Now, if you've created this character to be a different type of person, like a firefighter who tends to be very timid or scared, he thought he wanted to be a firefighter and he is a firefighter, but he's not very brave. Okay, well then that might make more sense, right? So it's all in the way that you create the character and that you define the character. and you keep it consistent throughout the story. That doesn't mean the character's not going to change. We want him to change, right? So maybe he makes a huge mistake here. Maybe for some reason, maybe he did drink too much and something terrible happens and his wife dies, right? This is going to push him now to change throughout the story and say, okay, well, because I was not consistent, because I made this mistake, it cost me my wife's life and it changed my life forever. So through the story, he's going to actually be who he really should be. But that's different. That is the growth of the character. We still want the character to be consistent to who he really is. And I did mention a little bit about knowing your character in the video I made on the character backstory. So I will try to put that up somewhere. It should pop up here somewhere. So watch that one and that'll give you a little bit more information on character backstory and creating your character. The next way that we might end up losing our reader is by that point of view shift, right? So if we're changing points of view all the time, the reader is not connecting with any one character for any length of time. So they might get confused, they might get lost, they might get frustrated, they might decide they don't want to continue to read your story. Some readers are a little bit more accepting of POV changes, some are not. I tend to not like that. So I'm reading a book and the POV is changing way too much and the writer is head hopping, I will probably get frustrated with the book. Some people won't, but what you want to do is try to avoid frustrating your reader. So especially if you're a brand new author, my suggestion is to, at least for a scene, stay with one character and then you can switch to a different character. So let's say that you have just a simple scene where you have a husband and a wife who have just watched somebody run into their car and they run out to the front yard. Both of them, you don't want to be in both their heads, right? One character is going to be the one telling us about what happened. It might be, the husband, it might be the wife. It just depends on whose head you want to be in. And a lot of times we choose the one that has the most to lose or the one that's going to reveal the most, maybe who's the most angry or who is going to actually go out and do something about this. So make it clear which character's eyes, ears, and all we're looking at this story through. And that way the reader will not be confused. Okay, the third thing is the meandering plot. And so what happens here, and I think there could be various reasons why this happens, but I think a lot of times it happens because the author is sort of afraid that the story is getting boring, right? So the story is in the middle, you're in the middle of the story and not a lot is happening. And so the author decides to toss in various chaotic events that may not really be connected to the ultimate goal of the character. So we have that inciting incident at the beginning of the story. So the beginning is super interesting. We kind of know what the goal of the character is. They're trying to reach something. They're trying to save someone's life. They're trying to do something, right? But in the middle of the story, the author's like, okay, well, this is kind of getting boring. And so let's throw in some tension, which we want to do. But we don't want to throw in random tension because that's when the plot becomes confusing. It's like, okay, well, why is he doing this? He's supposed to be saving this woman's life on the other side of the country, and yet he is spending time at a pool hall, in a fight. Why is this relevant, and why do I want to read this? So a lot of times, if we're throwing in random things that don't really fit the story, that's going to feel like a meandering plot. This is why it's super important for you to, at the beginning, before you start writing, to have these plot points with the progression of tension. So you're knowing that, okay, well, my character, this is my character's goal, and in this scene, he's going to get close to it. But then, maybe he's trying to find this person to save their life, right? They need to get some medicine. They need to get something. Somebody's out to kill them, and they want to find that person to let them know. Well, maybe they're getting close. They find this lady, but he thinks it's going to be the right lady, and it ends up not being the right lady. So that creates kind of some tension because, okay, well, now we have a problem. We thought we had solved it. We thought we were finding this person, but we didn't find the person. So you want to increase the tension, but again, it can't be just random stuff. So make sure that you know clearly how are you going to how are you going to create complications for your character, but complications that make sense and don't confuse the reader, don't leave them wondering like, why am I reading this? And it has nothing to do with the story. So the fourth thing I want to mention is that the character must have a goal. We know at the very beginning of the story what the character wants, what they need, what they desire. And that is what this character is going to go after in this journey that you're sending them on. So what's frustrating is when it's not clear really what exactly this character wants or what exactly you want as the author. I was reading a story recently about a character who was in a witness protection program, and her life is all of a sudden threatened again. She's exposed or something, and so she runs to her high school boyfriend, who she had a child with that he doesn't know about. But that she never contacted him in those like 16 years because she didn't want to put his life in danger. But then all of a sudden now she's contacting him and she's telling him that he has a child after 16 years. And then, oh, by the way, can you help protect me? So we know what the character wants. She wants protection. But it seemed, first of all, not consistent, right? So we're already breaking one of our, our rules of not frustrating the reader. But also, the goal really wasn't clear anyhow, because it's like, okay, well, what is this person who doesn't know anything about what you're going through? How is this person going to protect you, rather than going to somebody, I don't know, somebody else that could actually protect her? Well, it's, and it was a romance, so it was, okay, so this person's going to protect you because this is my old high school boyfriend, but it just seemed a little too contrived, right? The other thing is that I just didn't know what the author wanted to say. Was the goal of this story to show that the witness protection program has a lot of failures, or it's really not effective? Was it to show that just love never dies, that even after all this time, it's almost like you've never been apart and you're still going to fall in love even though you lied to them and didn't tell them that you had a child, right? So it wasn't working for me because I just didn't feel like the goals were clear. I didn't understand what the goal of the author was, and I really didn't understand what the character wanted aside from being protected, which made sense, but it was just confusing to me. The best stories are the ones that are clear and that the author has a well-defined message for the reader to figure out as they're reading the story. So by the time they close the book, they understand what the message of that book was. And again, it's not like a moral or anything like that, but they understand like why this book was written. What is this author trying to tell me about the story? So let me give you an example with a book that I wrote. So I'm going to go way back to one of my Laura Rios books. So I used to write as Laura Rios when I wrote romance and chick lit. And so this book was called Becoming Latina in 10 Easy Steps. Now, from the very beginning, I knew that what this book was about was identity and telling readers that you are good enough exactly the way you are. You don't have to change in order to please society. So a very, very, very basic summary of the story is that this character is a Latina character. She finds out at the beginning of the book that her mother had an affair with an Anglo friend of hers. And that she actually that may be her father, that her biological father may not be the man that she thought she grew up with all her life. So she goes on this quest to find out if this guy really is her biological father, and to find out if she is Latina enough. Because if she isn't, if she is half Latina, half white, then maybe she is not Latina enough. Okay, so this is the basic story. So I knew from the very beginning what her goal was, and I knew what my goal was, right? So my goal, again, was to show young women who may be reading this that they don't have to change anything, that they're good enough just the way they are. So how does this book end? It ends with her understanding that she is just fine the way she is. She didn't have to go through all these 10 steps to become more Latina. It didn't really matter if some other guy was her biological father. She was who she was. She was herself, right? She didn't need to change in order to please anyone. She didn't even need to change to please herself. So I had her go through this whole journey, all these steps, all these little silly rules that she set for herself, to show that at the very end, she didn't have to do any of that. She was already okay. Okay, so that was my message. and her goal, both our goals met at the end. My character's goal and my goal met at the end. Now, when you read the story, it doesn't feel like I am lecturing you and telling you this. I'm just telling you a story about what this character did. She, there's the 10 steps to become Latina. She does the first step, and it's kind of a weird thing. And then she does the next thing, and that doesn't work out too well. And then she does the next thing, and it's kind of, right? So she goes through her steps. And it's a little bit comical, it's a little bit sad. There's all these things that are happening to the character that has nothing to do with my message. I'm not telling the reader, hey, you need to believe this. You need to, but by the time that the reader gets to the end of the story, they got the message. They understand that because this character never needed to change, hey, maybe I don't really ever need to change either, right? So I am through the story passing on this message to the reader. And because we both had a goal, the character and the author, then the reader never feels lost. They know they're following the story. They're following the goal to see if the character reaches their goal. The character also stays consistent throughout, right? The plot also stays consistent. It doesn't meander all over the place. All the things that she does and all the complications have to do with her figuring out who she is and who her father is. So everything is consistent, everything flows, and the reader never gets lost. Okay, and then the fifth thing that you need to make sure that you take a look at is the style and clarity of your language. Well, that has to do with making sure that you are writing correct sentences, grammatically correct sentences, that they're flowing well. So the first thing you want to do is making sure that your reader understands the words. So don't try to sound overly educated, overly literary. Most novels are written anywhere between about a 5th to 6th grade level. Sometimes even a 4th grade level. And that's not to say that we're trying to insult readers. It's just that novels are supposed to be fun. They're supposed to be, it's not supposed to be something that is complicated and hard to read. And, somebody's reading it while they're waiting for their kids to come out of school, or they're going to the beach, or they're just reading it before bed. So not something super complicated. There are literary novels that are going to be deeper, more complicated. And if that's what you're writing, then of course, then you do want to use the appropriate words. But if you're writing any type of commercial fiction, you want to make sure that you're not using words that are too complicated and that's easy for the reader to understand what you're saying. The next thing is to avoid really wordy sentences. So if it takes you 10 words to describe something really simple, then try to cut those words so it's easy and it's really clear. So not due to the fact of her losing her job, she was late. Just because she lost her job, she was late. She was late because she lost her job. So it's just something super simple. So make your sentences easy without overly wordy words. So the other thing is to write in an active voice. The difference in the active and the passive is Stephen King wrote Carrie. That's an active voice, right? It tells you who the subject is, what he did, and the object, what he wrote, right? Or the story, the Carrie was written by Stephen King. That is a passive sentence because we're putting the person who's doing it at the end of the sentence. A lot of passive sentences just tends to slow down your story and not make it as interesting as somebody actually doing something. But again, I'm always getting corrected by Grammarly and all that, saying, hey, you've got a passive sentence, you have a passive sentence. Some of those I will change, but sometimes I want a passive sentence because I want to slow the reader down. I want to slow the scene down, or I don't want to say exactly who did something. So as a creative person, you have to decide how many of those active sentences you want. But if everything you write is passive, then you might want to change some of those. Use strong verbs. So instead of she opened the door, you could say she yanked the door open, or right? So something where you're using an active verb, a verb that really tells us a little bit more about what's happening rather than the same old she walked, she opened the door, she sat down. Just make it a little more interesting. And it brings the reader into your story more, and it makes it clear exactly what's happening. They don't have to guess, like, how did she open the door? You're telling them she yanked the door open. Another thing to look at is adverbs and adjectives. You want to be very specific with those and not use too many of those. So I'll give you an example here. Instead of saying something like, the beautiful flower smelled heavenly, it doesn't give us a very good descriptive feel of, first of all, we don't know what kind of flower it is. We don't really know what a heavenly smell smells like. My heavenly smell might be different than yours. So if we're a little more specific, what if I say the orchid filled my office with a scent of vanilla and cinnamon, reminding me of something, right? So I am being a little bit more descriptive with my adjectives and my adverbs, and I'm being specific. I'm not just leaving it up to the reader to figure it out. The next thing is to avoid cliches. So there are a lot of cliches depending on the genre. In romance, there are certain things that you'll read again and again and again. And in other genres, same thing. One of the ones that I really cannot stand in romance is the smile didn't reach her eyes or didn't reach his eyes. I read this in almost every single romance. I'm not kidding. Like everybody writes this into their book, and I hate it because it's like, can't you say this in a different way somehow? Everybody says it this way. It means nothing. Like, what are you trying to say exactly? So cliches are bad because people get tired of them and it doesn't mean anything anymore. So avoid those. If there's something you've read, especially if you've read it more than once, more than 10 times, more than 100 times, don't use it. Use something else. So in my other life as a non-writer, as an instructor, I am always telling my students this. Communication doesn't work if it's not clear. We're not communicating if we're not being clear. So whatever you have to do to make it clear, if you have to simplify your language, if you have to change your sentence structure, whatever you need to do, if you need to not head hop with fiction, then do what you need to do to make things clear, because if it's not clear, it's not communication. And this goes for stories as well, because we are communicating with our readers. We're communicating a story, right? We're giving them a message in this story. Even if it's just an entertaining story, there's still something we're saying with this book. And so if this is not clear to the reader, it will frustrate them. They'll lose interest. They won't come back to you and read anything else that you have. So remember, clear communication, that's the most important thing. And be kind to your reader, because you want your reader to love your stories. Okay, so that was my message for today. I hope that it was clear, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Again, if you haven't already, please give this episode a like and subscribe to the channel so that you will be notified next time when I do release another video. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again next week.